Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here for this daily medicine transmission. It is March 2nd, 2021. Our moon is finishing up her transit in Libra. It's going to move into Scorpio today. Oh, we're going to start sinking into the depths of who we are. Got a little bit of color back in my face. We kind of are starting to come out of this really incredible weekend. A lot of geomagnetic activity, a lot of solar activity. There is more solar weather coming. So be prepared for that. But there was a big old blast that happened, just getting us ready for March Madness. March Madness. Mars is in conjunction with the Pleiades right now. These are two energies that don't seemingly go together because, as many of you know, as Pleiadian starseeds, this is a unification, heart chakra, fluid, boundaryless, nurturing, mystical energy, and Mars is the god of war. So, but there's something to be learned here, that it's really important to understand where we've come from, and the ultimate spiritual weapon is our willpower, and not necessarily just our own personal willpower, but allowing God's will to move through us is actually the ultimate spiritual weapon. So there are aspects within our environment today. There are signs, there are omens, there are synchronicities, there are little voices, little musings, little just pieces of awareness that are going to come to us, I think, that will give us a sense of where we've been and where we're going. And no one really that has done anything superb or great or noteworthy is existing and operating in a vacuum. It is a consummation of many lifetimes and ancestral linkages. And with the sun in Pisces today, we have a chance to see what has come before us and use that as, at least to a certain extent, how to anchor into our own self, to allow divine will to move through us and to guide us, as opposed to trying to use just our minds and our ego-oriented psyche to direct things. Because it does seem, just generally and based on the intuitive message coming in, and just if you even engage on any level with the collective conscious awareness right now, that we are really still kind of struggling. And there is a bitterness and a desire to run away. And one thing that I heard many times on a particular news podcast is the broadcaster saying, "Where are you going to go?" There's no putting it back in the bottle, right? There's no going back to sleep. There is no exiting. Well, there is exiting. There is exiting. And with this full moon, there were exits. And there were other aspects that were brought to our awareness to really trigger that personal reconstruction, because there's a lot of rebirth and regeneration energy every spring, right? Especially in the Northern Hemisphere, we're coming into spring. But there's also just astrologically and larger cosmic cycles, there is a rebirth and a regeneration coming. So Mars at the very last degrees of Taurus is taking this one last opportunity to see where we've come from, to take stock of where we've been and those who have come before us in whatever way, shape, or form you most identify, either your own ancestors, galactic ancestry, the hero mythology from all types of cultural concepts. We can look at this process unfolding, and we can see examples of it from the past, because Pluto is effectively just, wiping away all paths up the mountain. It's bringing in, there's an avalanche, there's a mudslide, there's some destructive force that is going to take away those pathways that have been long tread. And it's really now getting into something even deeper than that we can anchor into and ground into, that will give us our willpower, because that is the ultimate spiritual weapon. And people don't like the word weapon, especially Pleiadian starseeds again, but this is where Mars is, and Mars is going to use weapons. It is the god of war, and there is, if you want to think about it like a tool, you can think about it like a tool as well. And it's really, we can't just sit back and be passive anymore. And bypass this whole situation. We have to be involved. And sometimes being involved is taking that stillness and taking that time and that respite to rejuvenate. And that's been the case. That's been a lot of February, actually, is to really start taking it all in, and that personal reconstruction that has been going on. But now things are starting to move. Mercury's moving direct. We'll be out of its shadow period by the next new moon. The Ides of March is the settling of debts. And so now things are starting to turn on and to percolate. And once Mars hits Gemini, that sprout's going to pop right out of the soil, and there's no turning back now. It's already made its way up from the seed, and the shell of the seed has already broken open. So we just have to accept that. And I really do feel like that generally that there's still a lack of acceptance and a real struggle with what's going on. There's a real struggle to get into our own willpower, into our uncompromising self that is really just a channel for divine energy. And there's some really good guidance to come through today. So like I said, the moon in Libra, it's going to square Pluto. It's already happening right now. We can look at the chart, actually. Let's do that. Let's look at the chart. There we go. We can look at the chart, and we can see as of this morning, the moon coming into that square with Pluto. So emotionally and personally, we want to, where the moon is in Libra, right? We want to sail above this whole situation. We want to transcend it emotionally and personally, intuitively. And it's not to say that we can't allow that perspective to be the case, and use that as a tool, because in a square to Pluto, there's really a very strong, struggle. And there is this disassociation that I feel like is happening because it's getting really difficult to be on the ground level and to keep our vibration at a certain level, to stay grounded, to also stay connected and surrender to trust of the natural process. And this square today is really going to highlight this tension of having to live through these destructive energies that Pluto represents when it comes to, erasing essentially the worn paths up the mountain that we are used to. And we want to, like I said, transcend it and kind of, sail above it and be like, oh, there's the pilgrimage, there's the pilgrimage. There is the shrine that we're going to. I can see it from up here. But the reality is that we still have to live through it and have boots on the ground, so to speak, as we go through this process. And then the moon is going to move into Scorpio today as well. And so we're going to go from this, application of knowledge that Libra represents down. We're going to start sinking into the depths of what it really feels like to be in a shared experience. And every month we have a moon in Scorpio. It goes through every sign every month. But this transit is going to be with Mars moving into Gemini as well. And so there'll be a lot of exploration and curiosity and knowledge and learning. Gemini is all those things, knowledge and learning. Along with that, we have, and that's tomorrow on the 3rd. Along with that today, Mercury is in a trine to the North Node. Remember I talked about how the North Node, as we see here, the North Node is at the same position of the Sun the sun at that lunar eclipse on June 5th, which was right after, like I said, right after George Floyd and the riots and the protests really erupted. The 16 degrees of Gemini is an activist, a woman activist that is, passionately expressing a new felt experience. So this is the direction that we are being pulled towards to collectively evolve. The north node of the moon, the head of the dragon. There's definitely new experiences to be felt. And Mercury is in this position now of management through the use of our intellect and our mind and our ability to hold that cosmic coherence and feel how everything is balanced. And there is a guiding light with Aquarius. There's a big businessman at his desk. And Mercury is really, really coming into a powerful moment of managing the collective mind and managing our intellect and managing the collective in general through the use of our intellect. And in a trine to this North Node, it's going to provide a channel. So much of this is learning how to channel this passion and energy in a way that's really constructive. And when we are losing faith and losing trust and our willpower is starting to dissipate, it's really difficult to be able to hold the container and the space and channel this. But Mercury today is really going to support this new felt experience that will, in fact, be expressed. I mean, this is where we're headed, the head of the dragon. This is pulling us towards this area of an eruption in some ways, a passionate eruption. This time, it is very much supported by Mercury in Aquarius. And so, along with that, like I said, the moon's going to move into Scorpio today, and we're going to start going down, right? We're going to start going into the depth. So we can go back to here, and then I want to show you the reading. So let's look at these cards, shall we? I hope everybody is doing well. Thank you for being here and joining me on this live transmission. I really appreciate it. Hi, Meg. I'm popping over to the chat to see what's going on. And Meg is always here, always consistent, and I appreciate that so much. So first of all, there are three kings in this reading. And two of them are in guidance positions, and the other one is reversed. So we already know right off the bat that we are not feeling very confident. And this came out yesterday too with the Queen of Keys reversed. There's a lot of lack of confidence, especially emotionally. We are not feeling in control of our emotions. We're not feeling like we can be engaged in our passion and purity at the same time. The King of Roses, that we cannot maintain an authority around our emotions. And so you have three kings in this, three kings, that's very interesting. Three kings that are coming out in this reading. So confidence, authority, management, being in charge of ourselves. We need to really embody this quite a bit right now, right? And because everything else in this reading is reversed. Five of Wands, the Hermit reversed. There's that Four of Swords reversed again, right? That truce. This is a cold truce. This is not respite or realization. This is cold truce. This is really, I think we're still very much struggling. So let's talk about it. So the Five of Wands coming into the moment, the strife. Usually you have something to learn with Saturn and Leo, really squishing down that combustion fire. When it's reversed like this, I mean, there's still struggle, there's still conflict, there's a spiritual crisis, right? Because it's not providing the impetus for our victory, right? It's not providing this renewal and this refreshment and this there's a will to break out, but Saturn is just really pushing down on this. So it's more destructive and restless and aggressive. This is the energy coming into the moment. There's a lot of restlessness and people are getting aggressive about it. They are becoming destructive about it. And the spiritual crisis, right? Because transformation and willpower to a certain extent, that is the fire element, right? We are losing the fire because we are being pushed down by the heaviness of Saturn to a certain extent. Saturn is in Aquarius right now, so it's actually kind of uplifting us and giving form and structure to the future that we are heading into in the collective. But in this card, what it represents, I mean, we are really, people are really feeling it, and they are coming to spiritual crisis, okay? Like, what do we do? How do we move past this? How do I express myself? How do I release this energy? Because I can't find an outlet for it. The strife is usually the moment where we really learn something and come to victory. And this is not being, it's more about the destruction, and spiritual crisis keeps coming out. People are really experiencing it. So in the present moment, we have number 9, the Hermit, which is the Virgo card. Also Saturn in Aquarius, search for wisdom. Well, I think that really what's happening is that there's this runaway. The Hermit draws inward to find himself or herself. That is what the Hermit does. Goes into the darkness, goes underneath. You can see the 3-headed dog of Cerberus. This is what the guardian of the gate of Hades, going into the darkness, under the surface, doing the work of personal reconstruction. You can't do that when you're out in the social sphere. So this is when you pull in and go under. And this is what the Hermit represents and offers, because then the Hermit brings the light to the world. With all of this strife and aggressiveness and restlessness, and then coming into the moment, instead of searching for wisdom, we really are just kind of burying our heads in the sand. And there's loneliness, there's bitterness, there's so much bitterness because things are not going the way that the ego and the psyche wants it to go, based on old patterns. And Pluto is going to make sure that there is no semblance of a path by the time Pluto is done in this degree of 27 degrees Capricorn. So just get that out of your head now, that there is going to be a pathway. We are forging new territory, and people are afraid. They're very afraid, and they're pulling in, not in a search for wisdom, but they're pulling in as a way to insulate themselves, and hoping that it'll just go away, or that's bitter. Lots of bitterness in this present moment. And it's really starting with this strife that we're not really, collectively able to get out from under. Now, what we know, what our conscious awareness is, what our institutional power, like what are we able to create as a result of our energy together? And this is, again, our conscious awareness where our energy is focused. This King of Roses is, so there's a disruption with the masculine. And this is a balance, right? The King of Roses is the masculine and the feminine water energy. And this, Mars at the very last degree of Taurus as well, and the Pleiades. This can really feel like, we don't want to be in a passive, emotional setting, but there is emotional upheaval, and and it seems overwhelming. I think a lot of people are becoming very overwhelmed, and there are a lot of endings. Okay. And the thing about endings is that they're also beginnings. And so this is a way to keep perspective. And so certain roles might be diminishing because things are ending, right? Role as a husband, role as a father, right? This paternal caregiver, this King of Roses is the masculine, but they are very much in touch with their emotions and their nurturing side. Well, this is also something that we're struggling with holding right now. And it's time to create a really caring relationship with ourselves and take control, again, of our perceptions. If our perceptions are out of whack, if our willpower is diminished. This came up really strong yesterday too. Archangel Michael was reversed. There's a diminishing of divine power. Now this, the court cards are us or other people. And so we're really feeling a diminishment in our emotional control, and our ability to stay grounded in our emotions. And there is upheaval big time. Okay. Now at the root of things, so our Ascended Master Hilarion is a master researcher, right? So when he comes up, he is representing research and science and spiritual communication. If you look at this card, you can see the silhouette of all of these past people in his lab as he is, diligently working and researching and learning and synthesizing information. But there is, again, a whole host of energies, individuals, and lineages that he is building upon. It's not that it's all coming out of nowhere. He's building upon it. And it's spirit communication, ancestors, things of that nature. And so with the Sun and Venus and Pisces, this allows us to connect to that stream of consciousness that may not be in the physical realm, as Capricorn, for instance, Pluto in Capricorn. But Pisces is something even more elusive and requires a surrender into the stream of divine consciousness in order to really pick up on. So at the root of things and where we find our personal power is, again, we're losing focus, I think, and becoming totally illogical. And people are begging for logic, but at the same time, they're becoming, like, collectively, it's collective. We're all becoming illogical because we are losing focus, losing willpower, losing trust in the process, and we're feeling confused. And so this is really what's rooting us right now. You can see how this can lead to a very cold truce, a forced restriction in our mental capacities and isolation, which was the Four of Swords. But some things are not known to us either, and we have to be okay with that to a certain extent. We have to bring our mind back into focus, open up lines of communication, spiritual communication. That's going to come out really strong as guidance today. Be honest with yourself, right? Do some work on yourself, do some research and forensic type of research on yourself, because we are feeling confused, but we're deceiving ourselves about something. We are not being honest with ourselves when this card is reversed like this, because we are not making an honest attempt to learn everything about a situation and do real research. We just want to confirm our own biases, and that is going to lead to confusion because it's not truth. And so, again, being honest with ourselves, opening up the line of spirit communication, and not in direct link to source, right? It doesn't have to be this thing where you're like, oh, spirit communication, that must mean that it's evil. I'm talking right to God. But that means being honest with yourself, being committed to the process, and having some willpower. Because when all of these things combined, again, this Four of Swords, cold truce, right? It is a forced truce. It is not a respite and a learning point. It is just like, I don't know where else to go, and so I'm just going to sit here. And it's very isolating, and it's a forced restriction of our mental capacity. So this whole process here is not leading to a very empowered place unless we interject something here to help us along the way. And as the moon starts dipping into Scorpio, the brooding, the depression, all of those feelings, the intensity of our emotions, is just going to increase over the next couple of days. And so, again, there's passionate new experiences that are ready to come through and be felt and acknowledged. And our minds can manage that if we really get honest with ourselves and actually do the work on investigating, like actually investigating, okay? So with our emotions, here's the King of Keys, right? Again, we need to be confident and authoritative with ourselves, and be authentic and focused on our goals, right? If we are having a hard time with our emotional state and we don't feel in control, we can turn our attention to something a little bit more easy to ground into, which is the actual earth element. The King of Keys is completely confident and astute, and entrepreneurial, focused on the goals, okay? Maybe that can help. That can help ground us into something rather than letting the emotions be blah all over the place because things are not, exactly going to our plan, right? We have to focus in on the divine plan, trust that maybe we don't know everything, and focus on what's right in front of us in real time. Be the master of our own domain right now to help pull in some of those, and rein in some of these emotions. Now, the rattlesnake, the experiences that you're presently going through are an initiation into fulfilling your purpose as a healer. Now, shedding, detachment. See, this is the thing, is like letting go of these aspects of ourselves in our life that are falling away, that we are kind of still holding on to. Transmutation, wisdom, resurrection, transformation, all of this that is happening that we feel out of control of our emotions is really about an initiation, because real compassion comes from an experience of suffering, and emotional upheaval is a form of suffering. And maybe that form of suffering is getting us up to speed for what it can be like for other people, so that we can step into our role as some sort of guide, facilitator, healer for other people later when they are going to be struggling as well, because that's kind of the whole point of everything, not suffering, but the fact that our attachment to our desires and our attachment to this, to the material world is where our suffering comes from. That's very much about Buddhism. So letting these things go and realizing that it's an initiation. And again, the King of Keys, master of our domain, right? Being confident and focused on our goals can really help pull these emotions in, and to realize that if you're feeling, again, emotionally this emotional upheaval, we're not able to stay grounded in our emotions, express that passion with a certain amount of purity and maybe even delicacy. If that's a struggle for us, just know that everything is here to help us and to be a lesson. And Ascended Master Hilarion, if we can get that upright, then that's, there'll be so much to learn here. So again, remain vigilant. This came out yesterday. Remain vigilant about the current situation. Be alert. This is about transitions. This is about omens. It's about shamanism. I mean, this is what people went to the shaman for this reason. Competence and being an adept means that we are completely focused on what it is we're researching and the knowledge that we are consuming, right? We have to be intentional about the knowledge we're consuming, the information that we're learning about. We can't just be a passive observer and just letting these signals come in and influence our perception. Hilarion is completely a master of what he is mentally consuming. And so part of that too is to be vigilant, okay? Be vigilant about the current situation. So pay attention to the omens, pay attention to the signs, pay attention to those moments of clear cognizance, or those downloads, or those intuitive hits, or the synchronicities that give you another direction, give you another footstep, another hash mark on the trail of where you're going. But you have to stay vigilant. Ascended Master Hilarion is vigilant in the work that is being done. It is not a passive situation. And on top of that, again, the King of Scrolls. I mean, it doesn't get any more obvious here about being open to new guidance and longing for a deeper understanding and greater clarity of thought. All of these things come about. This is about our personal rooting, our personal subconscious rooting, where we are energetically rooted. And it's about being honest with ourselves, being vigilant, being open to new guidance, because we are emotionally just all over the place. And rather than going inward for the wisdom, we're just kind of pissed off and bitter that things aren't going the way that we want. This is a collective statement, okay? This is what is collectively coming. And so again, this takes an incredible amount of willpower to be able to dive into these places and to feel secure and to feel like you can surrender, right? And this is what the sun in Pisces, right? This is the title about the willpower being the ultimate spiritual weapon. There is there are signs, there are swords in the museum, right? Swords being the mental aspect, the mental archetype. Swords in a museum that show how people before us used their minds as a tool, as a spiritual weapon, right? And the sun is allowing us to really fulfill ourselves today in this ability, if we can see, one second. Okay. Allow us to see examples. And Venus in Pisces, to thine own self be true, 7 degrees of Pisces. Really, it's like, no matter what, if you are on a trajectory of being completely authentic with yourself, eventually you will have to face the onslaught of the social sphere, and that's part of the process as well. And so if you realize that, it's going to be very palpable with Venus today, very emotional with Venus today, having that experience. And so sometimes we do feel like we're just, by ourselves, isolated on a rock in the middle of the ocean. But just know that the light of divine source is shining on you, because that is part of the process. We all feel isolated and abandoned that's part of the process. We learn to develop our faith and trust through this process. Any major religious figure that we are familiar with has gone through incredible tests of their faith. It's not like they were just always like, yeah, I have it all figured out. No. They definitely went through the most intense trials to strengthen their faith and to basically bring them to a point of surrender. And this is where we are headed, because it's already happening. So when Mars comes into Gemini tomorrow, this is when that energy of penetration and confidence and enterprise that Mars represents, the god of war, it's going to pop out of the soil, and it's time to start engaging with discovery and new ideas. It's going to be really incredible as we go through these coming weeks of March. It's going to be happening quickly. But for now, as of today, as the moon then dips into Scorpio, we have to be real with ourselves. Find ways to ground into the reality that's right in front of us. Understand that everything that happens is part of the teaching process, and we have to be open to that instead of wanting things to be exactly how we want them to be. And, sometimes things don't work out the way that we think that we should, but that means that we have to surrender to, we have to surrender more, right? And look to, the ancients, look to the ancestors, look to the scriptures, look to any inspirational, anything inspirational, or our own guidance system, right? Connecting in through our meditations and our channeling states, whatever it is that works for you, that gets you to a place where you can connect to that stream of consciousness that is not put through the filter of all of our egos. We all have it. We all are dealing with this. So that's really the transmission for today, guys. Thank you so much for being here. If you're interested in a reading or energy work, you can go to catalystenergies.net. It's in the description box below. If you are watching this on YouTube or BitChute, please subscribe to the channel. Definitely hit the like button. That helps push the content out through the algorithm. As I've said many times before, YouTube in particular is really stifling all their independent content creators. Basically, if they can't make a shit ton of money off of you, they don't want to push your content out, which is really doesn't help people who are independent content creators. So when you subscribe and like those videos, it really helps people who are trying to actually do things independently of these big tech monopolies. So, and BitChute just, it just helps get the information out through their algorithm. They're not necessarily censoring anybody. And we're on Telegram, we're on Facebook. You can always join us there for any kind of social media interaction. Telegram has a really great chat function, so I'm always encouraging people to do that. I hope you have a wonderful day. Please take very good care of yourselves. Look for the omens. Be vigilant. Be open to deeper understanding. And it's, be focused on the goal. Be focused on what's right in front of you. In the physical reality, as difficult as it is, we have to stay grounded in where we are and be open to guidance. And when that happens, that's when miracles happen. It really is. So thank you for being here. I love you guys.